Ty vole, kdy mě teď změřili, tak mám tak 3000.
A pak jí řekneme happy birthday. Tak to zapni. Hello?
Ona mě neslyší.
Vyndej ty sluchátka. Vyndej ty sluchátka.
Ne, to není tím. Ona má vypnutý zvuk, tak volá Blake.
Jo?
Can you hear us?
Zkus si odpojit ty sluchátka.
Can you hear me now?
Did you see our comments before?
Oh, you do, but you can?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. Well, because it might have been the headphones. I don't know why. Okay, anyways, I hope it's going to be fine now.
Okay.
Okay, great. Sorry for the technical issues. I guess you're not the only one who's got technical issues here. I've got them too. Okay. Hi, it's so nice meeting you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks, Blake. Hi, Teal. It's so great to talk to you. I'm so excited. I feel like talking to a celebrity or something like Justin Timberlake, like a teenage idol, you know. It's really an honor. Thank you so much for allowing us and giving us this chance to talk to you. Because, well, first, it's the solstice today, which is a pretty specific day, right? And
Yes.
good chance. Well, maybe first of all we should, or I should tell you something about us, who we are, because you probably don't know anything about me, right?
Yeah, tell me.
Okay, so me and my best friend, you put him. This is Jana. My best friend. We are two best friends, and we have a blog about healthy lifestyle in Czech Republic. It's called the Fit Fishes, basically, because we have a saying in Czech that goes that you're healthy as a fish. So, yeah, I know, it's weird. I don't know where it comes from, but anyways. I guess it's because we don't have sea in Czech Republic, so we don't actually know how healthy fish is. But we blog about healthy lifestyle, and really what we try to do is to build or help people to build positive habits and attitudes, and we're all about positive thinking and things like this. And we started just like two bloggers that used to diet a lot and hate themselves, and then we figured that it's so much better if you love yourself instead, and so we started blogging about it. And then eventually, I don't even know how, I got to one of your videos where you had some kind of workshop or something, and I was like, oh my god, this woman is so amazing. She's saying everything that I've always thought of but never sort of been able to put it in this type of manner or whatever. And so basically what I would like to do in this interview, I would like to get to know more about you, because I'm one of the people who's translating your videos in Czech right now. It's me and then Juraj, the other guy that you had the interview with last weekend. So we are basically the two major people who translate your videos in Czech Republic right now.
Oh, good.
And I don't even know if you know how popular you are in Czech Republic and Slovakia. Have you any awareness of that or not at all?
It's been out of body more so, because I've been called there more times now recently.
Okay, well, because...
So yes and no, I don't know any of the figures, and I don't really know on a physical level, but on a non-physical level, I've definitely felt it, yes.
Okay, great. Well, because I found it really interesting, you know, that it's in Czech Republic that you are so popular. I've been researching your videos, whether there are any other translations in any other languages, and there's nothing. It's mostly just English, you know, and then Czech and Slovak. And it's amazing because we are actually, or we used to be considered, one of the biggest atheist and agnostic nations in the entire world. And we are very skeptical in general, like Czech people are, or I would say at least. And so it's really interesting that you are so popular here, because it actually shows that it's the other way around, that people are actually very spiritual and that they have faith and many things they believe in.
Yes.
And then when someone like you comes in, you know, and is a very charismatic leader, sort of, they fall in love with you, basically. Well, actually, I figured you had a birthday, so we would like to say happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday! Well, thank you. That was a really exciting one. I had my very first birthday party.
Really?
Yeah, I've never had one before because my parents, when I was growing up, we lived in the middle of the wilderness. Our closest neighbor was like 50 miles away. I don't know how many that is in kilometers, but like a long way away.
Yeah.
So never had birthday parties with her.
Okay, so did you enjoy it?
Oh yeah.
So basically, my point is what I found or find still very interesting about you is when I started watching your videos, the first time I saw you, and even now when I translate your videos, the way how you put all your opinions and ideas and philosophies through is very, like, it makes me feel like this is not possible. This is just so surreal. They are so beautiful, so wise. You have all the answers. It feels like there is nothing you don't know, and you. For me, you feel like to be such an authority, and it's almost like when you watch a movie or something, or when you have celebrities, and you sort of know that these people are like normal, ordinary people, but not at the same time, because the way how you know them is very specific, and so you cannot really imagine them in like different lifetime situations, like they're fighting with their friends, or they are eating something and things like this. But then I watched some of your interviews, like for example the one with Yurai, where you are just an ordinary girl sort of, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but just you feel like someone that I would totally go for a coffee with.
Yes.
And just have a chat about different things. And so I guess I would like to ask you, who are you, Teal? Do you feel like more like a spiritual guide, or do you feel like more, because sometimes it feels like she's not a human, she's like an angel or something, and then you do show your human side, and it's like, yay, like she's the girl from the next door, and so my question is, I guess, if you would have to define yourself, who would you say that you are? Do you associate yourself more with like your spiritual side and the things you do, even on like a professional level, or would you say that you are rather just a girl like everyone else, sort of, even though obviously this is not the case always, because we are all special and equal and unique in a way, but what would you say?
I've never felt like a normal person. Mm-hmm. Part of that is because I don't really, now I have made a practice of relating to people, but I didn't relate to people in the past at all. Mm-hmm. So I would not say that I feel like a normal person, but I do feel like I have these two aspects, right? Mm-hmm. I feel definitely like I am this higher self aspect, which I'm completely in touch with all the time. I can switch into the modality of being there completely and not even relating to my temporary physical issues here in life. And so I feel more like two people in one skin.
Okay.
And I feel like my goal on a day-to-day basis is to bring them into alignment.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a bit frustrating, actually, if you want to know. If I'm going to get totally real with you, it's been really frustrating, because I'll switch into a mentality where I'm really, despite knowing all these universal truths, 100%, I'll switch into this mentality where currently I'm focused on, how frustrated I am that my kitchen isn't clean.
Yeah.
And so my life is a process of trying to sort of work my way back into what I really am, which is completely aware of all of it. Mm-hmm. There's not a question that I couldn't answer by virtue of the fact that I can access the Akashic records.
And
but still struggle with physical stuff,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So am I watching my child enough? Is he happy? What's going on in my relationships? All of it, But
so you are dealing with all these issues.
What?
So you are dealing with all these issues.
Oh yeah, and in fact, I used to be really frustrated about it in the very beginning of our career, because up to now it's kind of like people expect spiritual guides to be in the state where they only relate to temporal issues. And in English, of course, temporal issues means stuff that's sort of part of the physical dimension, like mortgage, children, relationships, that kind of stuff. And it's sort of, up to now we've had this view of spiritual guides where no matter, where it's kind of like us and them, Mm-hmm. Here's us, the rest of us that are struggling down here and really frustrated at how to apply these universal principles, and here they are and they're unaffected by it, and so they could live our lives better than we could, type of energy. What's ironic is that's not the truth of the situation, and I think that though they have benefited us, ultimately it's a detriment for that type of a persona to come across to the general demographic, because it really develops, like I said, an us and them type of attitude towards guides, and it also discourages people ultimately towards feeling like they can get there, because we start punishing ourselves. Every time we have an idea about what we should look like when we're in a high spiritual state, and every time we worry, now it's, oh man, as if the worry's not bad enough, now it's, oh my gosh, I just failed at being a spiritual person, I just got in an argument, so something must be wrong with me, type of energy. And so I think a lot of that is detrimental, A, and B, it is not the real truth.
Mm-hmm.
So if you talk to people that live around spiritual guides throughout history, even the most transcendental ones, Buddha, Jesus, all these guys, the story is much different behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
So the general demographic kind of wants to hear that enlightened perfection is possible. At the same time, it hurts them. But they want to know that it's possible. And so in the past, people have really rejected anything that is not super enlightened from spiritual teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of considered, this is why I'm being so brave recently, it was kind of considered career suicide, frankly. If you were a teacher and you knew all these things, but to admit that you had any struggle whatsoever was career suicide. It meant you were going to be abandoned by all of your followers and that you're going nowhere. But I disagree completely, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, I think also, when you share that you're vulnerable, it actually builds a bigger bond between you and your audience, I think, because it shows them that, they can do it too, because you are just like them in a way. Because I guess that was another question I had, whether you think, or because from my perspective, like I get everything you say on a theoretical level, because I've never experienced such things in practice. When I start meditating, I get bored because nothing happens, nothing goes on, right? I'm like, okay, is it happening yet? I'm always expecting something to come, and then I get bored and frustrated that I'm not capable of doing these things. And when I hear you talking, it looks so natural. But then I also noticed in different interviews and things you have said over the course in your videos and places like this, that you have already been born with certain skills and abilities that allow you to see things that other people don't see. I've heard you saying somewhere that you were basically born with it, with the access to all the information. So I'm wondering, do you think it's possible for someone who doesn't have these skills and abilities from the moment they are born to actually reach the level of awareness that you are at?
Yeah, at the risk of telling a joke, yes. I was going to be like, no, it's not possible. No, it's completely possible. In fact, I wouldn't be in this position talking to people if I didn't think it was completely possible.
Okay.
It's just, it's a matter of people learning how to come into alignment with all of that stuff. So when we're born, most of us still see all of that. We choose to switch off our genetics at a certain point so that we don't see those things. And so most of what I'm teaching people to do is to switch those things back on. Mm-hmm. It's just ironic that in order to teach people how to switch those things back on, they have to first access their emotions.
Yeah.
So, we like to think that getting happy, that's why it's kind of confusing, because there's these two sides of spirituality. There's the let's go get happy, and then let's see all these other dimensions. And they seem to conflict to humans, but they don't conflict at all. One is the pathway to the other. Mm-hmm. The happier you're getting, which is, of course, the natural byproduct of releasing resistance to the issues you have, is what causes you to start coming into alignment with your higher self. And when you do that, you match a multidimensional frequency. Thus, you have access to information which is not purely third-dimensional.
Mm-hmm. And so does this go hand in hand in... Because, like, for example, when you speak about the Ashketic records and things like this, from what I understood, it's like an out-of-body experience that you cannot really access it unless you master this thing or ability. That's actually one of... because we have so many questions, okay? I should definitely say this, because we told people and our fans and people that read our blog that we're going to talk to you, and we got like 220 questions from people that just love you and want everything to be answered, which I should probably apologize right now to everyone whose questions don't get answered, because it's just impossible. We would have to stay here for like a month so that you could answer everything. But one of the questions that I found really interesting, even for practical life, was how do you recognize whether you have actually processed an emotion in a healthy way or whether you are suppressing it and you're sort of denying yourself the emotion that you sort of feel like, okay, well, I have dealt with this, and so you kind of forget about it because you think you have dealt with it, and then 2 months later you like it pops out unexpectedly and you're like, oh, wait a second, maybe I haven't dealt with it that much as I thought.
That's how. If you're really going to live a spiritual life, the kind of life that everybody's talking about wanting, right, then you've got to be okay with potentially things never being completely healed. Because if we need something to be done, then it's not done. See how that's resistance?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The point at which it's like, okay, if it comes up over and over again, is the point at which you've released enough resistance that most likely you will not deal with it again.
Okay.
But the way, if you've really suppressed and really numbed out your emotions to something, it's still a vibration which is active. And so we could consider tuning into our emotions a pre-manifestational awareness. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But if you are so tuned out to that, then all you have to rely on is post-manifestational awareness. Meaning, I know based on the fact that I'm now in this physical argument with this person that there's something that I have not been looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So for somebody who's, quote, numbed out or suppressed, even though you may have done that with your emotions, it will still reflect in your reality. Which is why we say the number one most important question you can ask yourself is, how did I make myself a match to this? Mm-hmm. It's what most of us are not willing to ask when we're in fight or flight mode, like when we get in a fight with somebody, or like when we get in a car crash, where it's already in defense mode. If we could step back from that for a minute and not add blame to the equation, because that is an ingredient that does not actually need to be there, nor is it universally. Humans add that. So if we can stop with the blame thing, we can backstep a minute and say, how did I make myself a match to the car crash? What was I thinking about today up to this point? What is my general attitude about cars in general? Ask those questions about how this might be reflecting a state within you. Mm-hmm. And then that's going to be your indication in terms of how you might have, what you might be suppressing, what you might be stuffing down.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, it's much more beneficial for you to get into pre-manifestational awareness, which is really what I'm talking about all the time. Let's tune in and care how you feel enough that you notice in the moment when you start to have that decrease in emotion, which is what a lot of people have tuned out to. I know people in the Czech Republic are pretty good at this one. When I feel negative emotion, it's inappropriate for me to express that. I don't want to be a basket case, so I'm going to basically pull myself together and act as if it's not happening.
Yeah.
But that's a major issue, obviously, because you can't, when you do that, you can't actually purify the vibration. It doesn't improve at all. So, at the risk of looking a little bit hypersensitive, which I would wish for everyone over there, when you start feeling that decrease in emotion, it's time to stop and express that. I'm feeling this intense sort of drop down in my emotions. Now, what just caused that? What was I thinking,
I'm laughing because we just had a moment, like the last week together with Jana, I made a huge scene, so. And then I was like, I cooled down, I was like, okay, why did this happen? Where did this come from? But, it had to go out, sort of.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm very glad. I mean, people, if they let themselves do that, they'd be much closer to this higher state where they're feeling joy all the time. So what you did was much preferable to you suppressing that emotion and having the whole week go downhill, which is what would happen. Yeah. Suddenly it's like a snowball. Why is everything happening to me?
Yes.
Where it's like this happens and that happens and that happens, and you're kind of going, I give up. The universe is against me,
Yes.
That's how we feel when we're missing something we've been thinking, or,
Yeah.
And so the only way to know what you've been thinking is to pay attention to your emotions, of course. Because your mind basically molds this energy into a thought, and then that thought is then translated through your brain to your body. And your consciousness can mold thought so quickly, literally so quickly, that to call you into a place where you notice every thought you were thinking, it's not going to happen. I mean, when I'm watching you right here, it's like thought that I'm focusing on longer, thought. So to try to get you to tamp that down is not going to work. So for people, it's all about, all right, my emotions are the reflections of my thoughts. So if I have an emotion which is particularly intense, that means I've activated one thought for a long enough time that now it is registering physically.
Like feeling nervous for having an interview with you today? Yeah. Well, so is there anything you don't actually know?
There's all kinds of things I don't know. You should see me trying to like do dishes or turn on a computer. There's so much stuff I don't know, and I'm insatiably curious too. So, I couldn't like go blow glass today. There's a lot of things that people do in this reality that I feel like, you should see me. I'm kind of like a 3-year-old kid. I'm like, show me what you did. Oh, show me how to do it. Oh, because I don't do all of that stuff. It just so happens that a lot of the bigger questions that people have been asking forever, I do know. So
it's more like the manual and physical skills, sort of, that you don't know how to do because they need some kind of practice in the physical world, but you have the answers for the philosophical questions, sort of.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, how does it work that when someone asks you a question, or when you ask yourself a question, do you connect to your higher self immediately so that you have the answers immediately, or you don't even have to connect because you are connected already, or?
I don't have to connect at all but it's like when I'm in a vibration which is particularly low, then I consciously have to step back from it and go back into the vibration of the higher self. But even when somebody asks me a question, all it takes is basically me matching the frequency exactly of my higher self. That's it. And I can do that immediately.
So it's like a radio. You know where to tune yourself, and you get there immediately because you just know the way.
Yes.
Really.
Exactly.
So cool. I would like to do that too.
But sometimes it's fun. I mean, I could get into the answers that way, which I do, but it's fun sometimes to have a more full experience of whatever question that I've asked or that somebody's asked. For example, somebody asked me a question that No, it wasn't even a question. It was that I went through this big huge process just recently and tripped up on something which is an issue within the human race. Is this collective belief that something bad has to go wrong first for me to deserve happiness. Mm-hmm. So we kind of say, all right, well, I'm already sick, so obviously this week is going to go good for me. Okay. So we're plea bargaining with the universe. So we can tell the story. What's ironic is immediately I went to, higher self space, which is, well, Christian religions really did that. And then one of my guides said, well, they had to get it from somewhere, didn't they? And I went, and so immediately I wanted to basically connect with the higher self and get that information, but then I stopped myself and realized that I really want to, this week I'm actually doing this, I want to go do a fully in-depth, out-of-body experience where I go straight back to where this started in the human race, this collective belief. So even though I can do that immediately and get the answer, sometimes it's much more fun to fully go there and experience the whole damn thing, which I can do. You can jump back in time, when you're in the Akashic Records.
That's cool, but can you separate from that? I obviously have basically no idea what you're talking about because I have never experienced it, therefore I can only imagine. But for example, if I relate it to hypnosis, for example, because that's like the closest thing I can think of, many people get a lot of trauma from that, like going back and experiencing something again emotionally, because they cannot distinguish between it has already happened or is it happening now. So I'm just curious, when you do this type of travel, are you actually aware of the fact that you are not there, like really, but that you are just like experiencing it from a different perspective, basically?
It depends how deep I go. So you can choose to go so deep that you basically let go. It's the same way that you have chosen to go so deep into this program that you've kind of you deliberately let go of the awareness of who you really are. And so right now you're coming back into remembrance of that. So for you, most of the spiritual practice, most of I'm saying, the reason it feels good to you is because it's a memory. Mm-hmm. But it's like a memory that you've suppressed. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So when I go back, I can choose to go that deep into one perspective so that I have no awareness of this. Mm-hmm. And I do that sometimes if I really want to understand something.
But isn't it dangerous in terms of getting back?
No. It's not dangerous in terms of getting back because you've already made the choice to become this. And that was, obviously you knew that was part of expansion. And so what you're doing, it's not like you're withdrawing from this physical dimension and then going through that. You're just forking. So in order to come back, you have to go through the same personality. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a rubber band. And so what you'll see, especially with me when I come out of those mentalities, is it takes a little bit for me to get my bearings straight again.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have a monologue which I've written down that says, I am Teal Scott. I was born in 1984. And I'll run over basically like an overview of my life here up to the present moment. Mm-hmm. And that will bring me back into the frequency. But I can do, like what you said, I can go back and maintain sort of like I'm viewing it. But that sometimes, while it's beneficial just for information's sake to do that, it's not as intense as, so it's like not as intense watching a woman go through childbirth in the 1920s, during the war, as it is literally being that perspective.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Well, in terms of the expansion of the universe that you always talk about, that, well, from what I got, is that's basically like the ultimate goal of existence, right? Is to allow the universe, the source, to expand. And so I want to ask you, why? Why is it the expansion? Why does the universe want to expand? Why is it that's the ultimate goal, sort of?
Well, expansion is kind of... And we got an issue with language here again. Because expansion is just the closest word equivalent to what the universe is doing. The most close would be know thyself. Mm-hmm. So the universe is trying to know itself, and right now it's like a blank canvas. And so every new thing that is desired within the universe tells the universe more of what it is. And so what you're seeing is an expansion of awareness of self.
But isn't this like a never-ending process, or does it have an end, or is it an ongoing thing that never ends?
We shall see.
Okay.
Because even that is not decided by the universe yet.
So is it basically, if I sort of translate it to, again, like a human experience, being the universe, you want to get to know yourself because you don't know who you are. It's sort of like when you are working on self-development as a human being. You are trying to get to know yourself, all the skills, abilities you have, where you come from, who you are, why you are here in the first place. Is this basically what the universe is doing as well?
Yes, by extending itself forward into these different dimensions and ultimately into the physical dimension, that is exactly what it's doing. And so the sweetness of the moment of self-realization, right? I'm sure you've had those moments, most of us in the spiritual community have, where we're going, that is amazing! I have this whole other understanding of who I am, and the sweetness of that is what propels the universe forward to do it as well.
Mm-hmm. And so how has it all started? Like, there's the Big Bang Theory, right? Is that true, or how did it start? Like, where did the universe come from?
I can assure you much before that point.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that on a physical dimension, what it looks like when the birth of the third dimension happens is explosion. That's only what it looks like in the third dimension. Mm-hmm. So that is not the beginning of the story of this universe and expansion at all. Because by that point, we already had to create all these other dimensional realities. It was just like, you could think of the Big Bang as what if we made this super awesome and became an even more solid type moment.
But where did the initial think, the universe itself, where did it come from? Why? Why is it happening in the first place?
That's the issue right there, is because when we ask that question, there's no way to answer that question, because we're asking the question from a third-dimensional mind that only understands things in terms of linearity, with a beginning and an end. We literally have no way of conceiving mentally of what it means to be eternal. Mm-hmm. And so when I tell you that the universe gave rise to itself, or that the question gave rise to the universe, and that the question did not have to have something questioning, it's too much for the human mind.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
In other words, the idea that something can arise from nothing is not something which is part of our third-dimensional reality. Mm-hmm. But it is the reality of our universe outside this dimension.
It's really interesting. Well, I guess because my original intention was to keep this a little bit more down to earth in terms of because what we try to do with our blog is to make it not attractive. That's not the right word. But we try to have the audience, the broadest audience possible, so that we help people from like the general public build positive attitudes. And we try not to be too orthodox, because we know that Czech people are like skeptical and things like this. You gotta speak in a certain way to make it understandable to people who are not in the level of understanding certain things. And so that was the reason why I started asking you also things like if you do with everyday stuff, to make it more human, sort of. And I know that you are living on a vegan diet, right? Or raw food? Do you eat raw food diet, or what is it?
I try to do raw food as much as possible, but as of right now, I really feel as if it's important to demonstrate to people who aren't ready to go there what it looks like to eat on that kind of a diet, which is kind of a step in the right direction. Also, me being on the road, it's profoundly self-hating, ironically, for me to be that strict with myself, because it sort of turns into this like major issue. It's hard enough vegan, So
yeah.
When I go to places, it's like when people don't understand this kind of stuff, they try to feed me all kinds of things I can't eat, and then it just starts getting uncomfortable. So for right now, the answer for me in terms of being the most self-loving is vegan, not totally vegan raw. But if I find a raw restaurant versus like a pure vegan restaurant, I'm going to the raw food restaurant.
Okay. And so do you ever eat anything unhealthy then? Like do you cook cookies or do you bake cookies or you do anything like that? No.
I do make cookies, but they're on the diet and they have no sugar in anything. So I'm obsessed with the substitutions. Okay. That's something I've been doing forever because I love cooking so much. I love finding ways to make what looks and tastes unhealthy actually be healthy.
Yeah, so that's sort of what we try to do as well. Especially Jana, she's a great cook and she loves baking and do all these things. So.
Okay. Here's the rule of thumb, which will be really easy for everybody. If you lift up a piece of food and you think that food isn't healthy and you put it in your body, then it will be unhealthy.
Yeah.
So for those of us, that's all we got to think about. Why does Teal not eat a cookie out of the store, even if it's right in front of her face? Because if I'm looking at the cookie and I'm already saying that does not feel good, and that's like something that's not going to be good for me, then you can be sure that it's not going to yield positive results.
But does this ultimately mean that basically ignorance in terms of not knowing that, for example, fast food is going to make you sick is sort of not going to cause you any harm because you don't have the conception of that this is bad for you?
Hypothetically, it would cause you less harm, but here's the issue. This is why it's so funny talking about food. It's because everything that we talk about relative to food is kind of a hypothetical. Because hypothetically, if you could think that a candy bar was awesome, good, what is a really sweet thing in your country?
Well, we have actually much less sweet pastries and things than you do in US, but we have a lot of bakeries. Like we have babovka, which is like a sponge cake. Or we have buns filled with farm cheese.
Looking out like, give it.
Exactly, I love it too. It's so much to versus these things.
Wait, so how do you pronounce that?
Babovka. It's Babovka.
Oh god, that sounds good, alright. So basically, let's say that if you could think pure positive thoughts relative to eating a babovka, then it would not harm your body. But here's why this is a hypothetical. If you were to raise your frequency, meaning we're living kind of thoughts where we're positive thinking, we're doing things which are in line with our highest good, the vibratory rate of the babovka would not be anywhere near our vibratory rate. And so we would not even attract it into our reality. And if we had it in our reality, we would not feel the compulsion towards it. So the only reason you feel that compulsion towards babovka is because your frequency is low enough that it matches those kinds of foods.
Oh no, my world is falling apart right now.
Well, did you notice this though? Like most women, when they're on their periods, right, or when we're in a depressed mood, that's when our thought patterns are spiraling low enough that suddenly that looks really yummy.
I'm totally an emotional eater, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so I guess I have a question that I gotta ask you because our blog is about healthy lifestyle. What does a healthy lifestyle mean or look like in your opinion or for you? What would you say that a healthy lifestyle is or isn't?
I would say that we can make it super, super simple. Mm-hmm. And a healthy lifestyle is anything where when you ask the question, what would I do if I loved myself? The answer, basically, is the healthy lifestyle. So it's a healthy lifestyle is going to look different from person to person and different from 1 year to the next based on a person because it's a progressive thing. So, for me right now, does it sort of look like a healthy lifestyle to be a raw foodist? Yes, but for me, it doesn't look so healthy. Why? Because I know that in order to live that kind of a diet right now, I would be focusing more on denying myself all the time than I would be focusing on really enjoying what I'm doing with my life. So that's going to nullify every physical action I take towards raw food. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, if I ask myself, what would someone who loves themselves do? Would we go on a walk right now? If the answer is yes, then it looks like a healthy lifestyle for me looks like taking a walk. We're always working with our human ideas about what health is, though. So most of us, the second we have an idea, walking is healthy, this kind of eating is healthy, then that's the rule for us. So you'll notice that when you ask yourself the question, what would someone who loves themselves do? The answer is going to be in tandem with what we already think is healthy. Which is the only reason why it sort of seems like, well, that and frequency, vibratory rate is the reason why it seems like people who are in a high vibratory space all have the same kind of lifestyles, We all eat the same kinds of foods, we all have, participate in the same kind of activities. Most of us meditate. It just looks like that because as we increase our frequency, we're matched to other things at that same frequency. So it's not like we can write out a recipe for all people. In fact, that's one of the things I think is the most important, is that humanity in general has been focusing at the human organism as if we can separate this part from this part from this part, and that I can tell that you're going to be the same as this other woman, When humans, one person is more like an ecosystem than an organism. Meaning, they actually just did this awesome study that came out, which is just going to back up exactly what I've been saying, which is that all of the life that makes up your intestines, like your exact biochemical balance in terms of all of the bacteria and all of the biophages that exist inside of your system are more accurate to you than your fingerprint. Mm-hmm. So you are this very complex, totally unique ecosystem. And we're just looking at the exterior, I guess, of that system. And so I can't tell you what would be the best for you and you and you and you and you and have it be the same thing. So we get into trouble when we say, oh, all people should eat this and that's the answer to health, or all people should exercise this way and that's the answer to health. It's much more individual. So the only way to say what is to live a healthy life is to take the individual, have them get in touch with their own emotions and their own intuition to such a degree that they are doing what's right for them. So like green tea in general, right? We think of that as a healthy food.
Yeah.
But it might be very self-loving and very healthy for you, whereas way too much caffeine content for her. And so for you, healthy. For her, not healthy. Mm-hmm. Make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's also probably the issue with modern medicine, right? That it sort of tries to generalize and doesn't take individuality and perspective at all, because it gives everyone the same pill, it treats everyone the same way, doesn't really have time for listening to your story and all the reasons behind why you're passionate about this topic. I know.
Did you see my blood pressure?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, it's a major issue. It's such an issue. This is a major issue with Western medicine. We cannot approach the body like it is a mechanical organism. We can't treat people like they're the same. And so until we learn how to not do that, Western medicine is going to continue to fail, which is what it's doing already. I mean, this is the whole thing. Western medicine is very good at putting a physical body back together. So let's say we're mangled in a car crash. It's very good at piecing this bone with this bone, and that's what it's good at. The rest of it fails miserably. Like literally so bad, especially in terms of chronic illness, that it's abysmal. It's embarrassing.
And that's what I always say, that it actually even makes you feel like you're taking your body to like an auto mechanic or something, fix all the pieces because it's not working anymore, and then you're sort of expecting to get out of there and everything's working again, and no, it's not. And then people are like, oh, what's going on? Yeah.
Well, it feels that way because that's how it is. That's how they see it too. The doctor who's a stomach doctor deals with the stomach. That's all he deals with. He doesn't understand the way the stomach relates to everything else in the body.
Well, because many of the questions we got were actually health related, obviously, and but many of them are very general in terms of what's the cause of depression, how to treat it, or what's the cause of this type of disease and that type of disease, and that was actually one of my questions, whether it's even possible to say that there is some kind of general ultimate reason behind illnesses in general, or whether it's so individual that you just cannot say that, because for someone it might be self-hatred, for someone it might be actual toxin poisoning from the environment, for someone it might be something completely different you would not even think about as the cause of illness. So is it rather like this, or probably
it's a little of both. So while everybody is individual, what you definitely see in the body, so the only reason we can know that this organ affects this other organ is because it's a pattern. And so the reason that it's quite, I guess, easier for people to say what is causing a specific issue in terms of thoughts is that specific thoughts feed into the body in certain ways. So somebody who's thinking self-worth issues, if you watch that thought pattern, it will come out and go into the stomach. No matter where you live in the globe, that's how that thought pattern affects the human body. So when you're dealing with stomach issues, you are dealing with self-worth issues. So we can be general about it that way. But obviously for everybody it's going to be a different cause for those kinds of things and maybe a different thought. So I may think a thought, I don't deserve something, that's a self-worth issue, and that may be causing the stomach issues. Or else I might think, I'm going to fail. And that is the self-worth issue that goes into the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And unless we identify that particular thought, that's our thought, relative to that type of issue, we're not going to actually solve the stomach problems.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, in terms of sight problems, because that was one of the questions I am actually very interested in, because I have bad sight myself. I am actually wearing lenses right now. And so, why do you think it's such a big issue right now in today's world that there are so many people who are getting sight problems? Again, is it possible to generalize or not?
Okay, so you're going to speak to people. I'm sorry, I get so excited. All right. You're going to speak to people who are going to tell you a lot of stories about how it's the pesticides in foods or all these other things that are causing it. That is just what we're making ourselves a physical match to. So if you were a child and you were a match to some sort of a hazardous spill, like a chemical, it's because you already vibrated, you were already thinking thoughts that made you a match to that. So let's tell the real story. Ready for this?
Yes, I don't know.
Most of us come into this physical dimension and we forget that we create our own realities. And so we think that we're opting into a physical reality which is already here and already static, right? No matter whether I'm here or not here, the war is still going on in Iraq. Right? Mm-hmm. The minute we think that way, there's this major disconnect here between who we really are and who we are in the physical body. Who we really are says, why are you focusing on that? You came down here to focus deliberately on things that made you feel good so you could create your own reality. And the physical self says, I'm focusing on it because it's true. And the higher self says, well, you better not focus on that. But I have to focus on that. No, but you don't. Well, okay, in order to not focus on that, I have to not see it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think I have just sorted my side issues.
Oh, yeah. So the answer is, the question to ask yourself is, what is it that I'm not wanting to see?
See, but that's a really interesting question, because at the same time, I am sort of convinced that I'm very open-minded and that I'm give it to me. I'm ready to handle everything, and I want to know the truth, and I'm open. I feel like I'm opening my eyes to everything and not really hiding away from anything. But I guess that's probably that might be the blind spot.
Oh yeah, if we have eye problems, there's always a blind spot.
Yeah.
It's that we may be open to seeing a lot of things, but there's definitely something there we don't want to be looking at. Or there's definitely a side of us that is still convinced we don't create our own reality, so we'd rather not see reality. And it's kind of like a cop-out. If I'm not seeing things that are in front of my face, then it's easier not to focus on them. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not the kind of person that distrusts my own ability to think in a way that benefits me, let's disable my body so then I have an excuse. So it's like a crutch.
Interesting. And so when we were talking about the fact that you are so popular in Czech Republic and Slovakia, do you have an answer for that? Why is it that it's these two countries? Because again, like what I said in the beginning, it's fascinating because of the sort of religious, skeptical things, or the climate that's here, and also because of our communist past and all these different things where people were suppressed for so long, basically, and they had no freedom of expression, or they didn't even seek it in many ways because they felt threatened by it, and maybe that doesn't have any sort of connection whatsoever, but
it has a huge connection.
Okay.
What it is that when we are in an attitude of total atheism, we're swinging the pendulum. So we've come from this total control, most of it religious-based and all this other stuff, then we swing the pendulum and we reject it completely. But by swinging the pendulum and rejecting it, we lost something very valuable. Mm-hmm. And so most people, though they felt more free in a state of rebellion, they felt like some kind of absence here. Mm-hmm. And so many of them were asking, what is the meaning of this then? Because there is a sense of meaninglessness that happens when you believe in atheism. There's a sense of there has to be something more here, and I'm basically spiraling. So this thing which felt better than being totally controlled by communism, this thing that felt better to me doesn't feel better anymore. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, people pushed forward, even subconsciously, asking to know what is more than this. And so you always get your answers when you ask those kinds of questions. And they always come in a package that appeals to the specific race. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's really interesting. Because, yeah, I found it fascinating because, I would never expect that this would get, the Czech nation and Slovaks, Czechoslovaks would get so hit by this, because I was like, yeah, Czechs are very skeptical. I sort of feel like there are two polars in our society, that people are either very open to this or they are like super skeptical. They don't really want to hear about that, and they are like very, materialistic based, and they call themselves the realists, right? Like, well, what I see, that's what is, right? Like, it's got to be logically explained, otherwise it's non-existent. Like, how can I trust you that you are telling me the truth? Like, you don't have anything in your head.
So step one is I explain things in a logical way. Step two is I don't need anybody to believe me, and I think you can feel that when I'm talking. I think the worst thing I can do for somebody is say, this is the truth of the universe, this is how it is, now swallow it. That's the opposite of what I do. Most of my teachings are about, look, I don't need you to believe me. I need you just to admit to the fact that your life is miserable enough that you might want to try something another way, and try it. And if it works for you, then awesome. If it doesn't, then throw me out the window.
Yeah.
And so for people that are skeptical, that doesn't feel like a threat. That feels like, okay, you're right. I'm walking through my life and I feel sort of numb. And I don't know what the purpose of this crap is. And so I'm going to try it. And ironically, which is why I'm teaching this, when you try this kind of stuff, you realize it works. Oh my gosh, I focused on what I would like to do today, and that one thing caused me to feel better. Mm-hmm. And now because I saw how that just worked, I'm open to a little bit more of what this person is saying. And then they just start opening, kind of like a flower. Mm-hmm. It is usually our cultures that are the most self-oppressed that are the ones that are the most hungry for opening. I would expect anyone who feels not free in general, which is a big part of the Czech Republic culture, to enjoy me, because that's really what I talk about, and that's what I vibrate at, is the frequency of freedom. But what is freedom? Is freedom rebellion from control externally? No, it's freedom from our own regimes.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I feel that we have always been doing, in a way, that we have never been like a nation of fighters that would go in the streets with a gun in a hand and rebel against the establishment or something. It has very much always been through arts and like intellectual stuff, and people chatting in the pubs and like playing drama and things like this. So it actually like creating sort of an internal world where you have your own personal freedom no one can take away from you. Yeah. So yeah, it actually makes sense now when you're saying that. It's sort of, the pieces of the puzzle again get together. Yeah. And so another question I have, and that has been asked by your followers, was you mentioned in one of the interviews with Juraj that humans are very specific by not understanding that the victim mentality they have is something they sort of bring upon themselves. That if something bad happens to you, that it's because you have attracted it, because you have become a match to that. So I want to ask, is this like an sort of like an evolutionary thing, or is this something we will grow up from? If I put it this way, or how? Yeah, is it like an evolutionary state, or will we get rid of this, or how much effort is it gonna take before we finally get it, or what is your opinion on this?
We're gonna evolve out of doing that. Part of what makes the human species so... Hello! My son just came in the room.
Hi!
Hi! Yeah, I know, darling. Do you want to say hi to the Czech Republic? And then you can go back and play with Daddy. Kayla, come say hi, my love.
Hello! Oh, you're blonde! That's so nice. Ahoy! Ahoy! That's how we say hi. Ahoy!
Ahoy, Kizzy, ahoy.
Ahoy! Oh, you're so cute.
Okay, you ready to play with Daddy again? Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, he likes you.
Oh, great! How old is he?
Why does he say yeah?
Because they were excited to see you. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, my son popped out blonde. Can you believe that? I guess they call it the zygote lottery or something.
Now at least he knows how to say hi in Czech. Ahoy. You know, that's something handy.
Where was I? It's something that people are going to evolve out of, but the issue with the human race is part of the reason that they are so expanding. So, like, in terms of the universe, we look at species in terms of the amount of expansion coming out of it. Part of that in the human race is self-awareness. So it's not about that other thing, it's about me. They're very self-focused, and that's really beneficial for expansion. And so the taking of responsibility is part of what caused the human race to evolve as quickly as it did. But there's also a shadow side to doing that, and blame is definitely the shadow side of that.
Yeah.
And sort of victimhood, which is created by me blaming myself and putting myself on bottom, is the shadow side of that. So we are trying to take this diamond in the rough and sort of scratch off the rough and end up with this diamond, which is what we're doing relative to our tendency to blame ourselves and to spiral that way by turning this really awesome mirroring thing that's going on. Our awareness, of course, of when I project emotion, it's not even about whether it's my fault or not. The universe just goes and reflects it exactly in the physical dimension. We're going to come into alignment more with that understanding than making it about, oh, look what I did again. Great. Now I know that I create my own reality, and now that I've created this thing, I should basically be punished because look what I just did. Type of mentality.
And so how long do you think that it will, or is it even possible to say this? How long is it still going to take before humans in general? Well, because, for example, like I've read the book from, I think his name is Richard Hawkins, Power versus Force, where he has the map of consciousness, right, with like all the calibrating levels. And what he says in the book is that humanity at the moment resonates somewhere around 200 frequency, which is the level of the emotion of courage, which is basically a really good state because it's sort of like the empowered state already, even though it's just slightly, we are there, that we are not in the disempowered levels completely. And so I'm just wondering how much effort and time is it gonna take before we resonate higher, before...
I'm sorry. It's going to take as long as it takes for us to drop the idea that it's going to take effort and time.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that's yet again a low frequency way of looking at it. Kind of like, it's like when somebody says, how long is it going to take me to get over this issue? I'll say, until you no longer care whether you're going to get over it or not. Because that's when we're willing to let go of the fact that there's anything wrong with us.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking at the human race that way, I'm keeping it in this frequency.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
That's the reason that I steer clear, even though in people's life paths, what they're matched to in the future, basically, because law of attraction works on everything, including future. So right now, you're actually setting up what you're a match to in the future for a long way. So I could read those and tell you exactly what time you're a match to it currently, but that will always change. And so there's no real reason for me to tell you of a truth that is not static, a truth that is not going to stay that way if you increase your frequency quicker today.
Mm-hmm. Well, what sort of not scares me but intimidates me in this is that level of ignorance, basically, you know, that like you feel like, okay, I'm doing things the right way, I'm trying to think positive and do like positive changes in my life, and then you're like, oh, okay, I've been focusing on the issue the whole time instead of focusing on something that's not an issue. And it's like a vicious circle for many people, you know, that like some of the questions we got as well were around like how do you prevent chemicals and microwaves and pollution and radiation and rays to affect your health, whether there is any protection and things like this, which is like, I get the fact, I know why people are asking this, because they want to avoid things that affect their health badly. But again, like what you're saying, if you think that this is affecting you badly, then you are attracting it. Am I saying that right? So what is the
This is why. This is an inclusion-based universe. So in an inclusion-based universe, you can't push anything out of your reality. And so this is how it works. If I'm pointing at something and saying, no, that's bad, I don't want it, you're including it in your vibration. If you're pointing at something and saying, yes, I want that, I love that, you're including it in your vibration. So it's impossible to avoid or to protect yourself against without simultaneously focusing on what it is that you're trying to avoid and protect yourself from. And this is just, it's common when we get into this issue because we are new to the idea that we create our own reality here. So this is a brand new idea that we're trying to marry with the idea that there's some truth in the universe we need to own up with. So this is just the natural thing that happens when we're changing our whole beliefs. So the goal, of course, is to jump totally onto the ship of I create my own reality. Thus, if I do that, I don't really have anything to fear, do I? Mm-hmm. Now it doesn't matter what the government does. Now it doesn't matter who creates what device. It doesn't matter whether they're dropping chemtrails. Because if I do create my reality entirely, and if I work my vibration high enough, I won't be a match to it no matter what. And if we do that as a race, we won't be a match to anybody inventing those things that could harm us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but doesn't it take time though? Like, I definitely agree with this. Like, this is something my mom has always taught me as well, not even knowing you or anybody at that point. She was always, if you want to make a change, you got to start with yourself, because you cannot expect anyone else to change if you don't change in the first place. But this still doesn't deny the fact that you can change and like slowly, you know, maybe influence other people as well, that they will, you know, they will be like, okay, well, this is working, let's try this as well. But that doesn't deny the fact that still the world operates in certain mode. But is it that basically, like, for example, I don't know anything about chemtrails and, you know, conspiration theories and something like that, because I'm not really interested in that. But if there is something like this, does it mean that if you don't even think about it, if you don't have the concept of it, that it doesn't affect you? It's sort of like with the food that we were talking about earlier, you know? Like, if you have the concept that hamburger from McDonald's is going to make you healthy, is it? Because it's still processed or made by some people that puts some frequencies or energies in it, and those will affect your body?
Okay, here's the issue. What you're doing, the mistake that you're making right now is that you're thinking that it's possible for someone to experience something like McDonald's even if they didn't focus in a negative enough way to be a match to it.
Okay. So
it's not about knowing or not knowing. It's not like if you don't know that McDonald's is bad for you, that it's good for you. What it is that the person who doesn't know McDonald's is bad for them, but is also thinking positive thoughts on a daily to daily basis, they won't even be a match to the experience of McDonald's.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's just it's hard for my brain to process it. No, because I definitely, like, I do understand the concepts. It just, sometimes it feels like it clashes with the reality, right? But I know at the same time that it's your brain who creates the reality. That, like, what you focus on, you have. It's like, you know, when someone starts talking about this, then suddenly you see babies everywhere. And it's not just that there would be so many babies all of a sudden, it's just that you start focusing on them. Yeah, but it's just sometimes it's more complicated in the life than just seeing babies, so it takes you a longer time to process that in your head. And then we had another pretty interesting question that goes back to relationships, because and to your video about the 10 tips about relationships. One guy asked whether you could answer how do you put this in practice with like open relationships, open sexuality, things like this? When you have a partner that you have some kind of intimate relationship with, you might live together, and then like all of a sudden someone comes from the outside and you're still like, you might tell each other, okay, it's fine, you know, if you have other partners somewhere else, but then again the practice comes in play, and it's like, yeah, you have all of a sudden like a hysterical attack that you are jealous or something like that. How do you deal with these situations in a real life?
You gotta realize that if you're even a match to being with a partner who would freak out about that, you've got issues relative to yourself doing it. So it's all about purifying your ideas about that in general.
Yeah,
so,
that's what I thought.
So yeah, with that, that's it's never going to be an issue of, oh, I'm going to go take this action, which is super in alignment for me, and it's going to yield negative results. If it does, you did not completely line up with it. So what's ironic about the human species is, if most people who are wanting open relationships ask themselves the question, do I really want an open relationship with someone that I'm completely in love with? Most of us answer no.
Yeah.
Most of us will realize, when I'm really into somebody, I don't want other people to sleep with. In fact, when I'm with them, all I can think about is that one person I love. So that's the indication that what's the real issue is what's going on between you and your partner currently. It's not that you're super in alignment with like open relationships and they're not. Make sense?
Yeah.
So that's the time to ask yourself, am I really in love with this person still?
So does this mean that basically when you are truly in love with someone, you don't want to be with anyone else? Because again, this is sort of like a generalization maybe, or is it how it works? That when you feel that connection, you feel it with one person only?
It's a pattern in the human race, that's all it is.
Okay. Yeah, okay, right.
Can't like where in alignment for them means that they will have open relationships. But it is more likely that the pattern within the human race, that's because the human race has so much Pleiadian DNA, and Pleiadians are pair bonders naturally. Mm-hmm. So because the human race has such dominant Pleiadian DNA, especially relative to relationships, then what you're going to find is more often than not, when a person is completely in love with someone, they don't want to be with anyone else.
I'm really sorry. We are just having some other technical issues here. If not, yeah, sorry. What's going on, Yanni? Sorry for this. Another question we had was about dreaming. What's going on when you dream? What is it? Is it like a different state of consciousness where your consciousness basically gets detached from your physical body and therefore you connect to your highest self, or what is it? And what are dreams really?
You are out of body when you're dreaming.
Okay.
So when a person goes to sleep, their consciousness withdraws from the physical body and goes all the way back to source energy, meaning that you are in your highest dimensional aspect. But you're there for quite a long time, ironically. Of course, time is relative up there, so from a physical perspective, you're there for a long time. But as you come back into the body, you are passing through all these other dimensional realities in order to re-enter and rephase with your physical dimensional reality. And that happens in split seconds. But as you go through that, you are downloading information about what is in those other dimensional realities for you. So let's say in your physical day-to-day life, you are thinking really negative things about your boss. You're feeling really controlled. Now let's say that you go have this dream about a giant red ant that's chasing you around. And when you think about it, when you come back awake, you realize that the feeling that you had about that black ant was the same that you have about your boss. What it was is that when your brain came through all of those thought forms in the other dimensions, it interpreted it in the way that it can understand the vibration the best. So, ironically, your brain might decide that a giant red ant is more symbolic of the way you feel relative to your boss than the image of your actual boss, which is where dream symbology comes in.
Okay, so for example, if I oftentimes dream about driving a car that I cannot really control, then it might be a symbology of like I'm not in control of my life, basically. It's like not having brakes in my car and just going somewhere and I'm gonna crash.
So what you'll notice is that you feel like that quite a bit. It's just the reason that you feel normalized to it is because your brain says, when I feel out of control, when I order something at this restaurant and they don't have what I want, that's normal. But if you were to check your emotions actually feel more like you were down a hill in a car with no brakes. So your brain says, actually, the extremity of the emotion you feel relative to that more matches this scenario. So we'll show you that scenario. So the dreams are an incredible opportunity for you to know what frequency you're vibrating at, what you're actually making yourself a match to, ironically, because that's the actual vibration that you have relative to whatever normal event you've got going in your life.
But what about the thing that we don't generally actually remember our dreams? That it's something, actually, that this is an issue for me. Like, I don't ever remember what I was dreaming about. I would like to remember so that I could analyze it maybe, but I don't.
So all you want to just start pulling at strings then. So first of all, what would be good for you is to release resistance and say, you know what, if I'm supposed to remember something, I'll remember it.
Okay.
So there, you've already released resistance, so you're no longer focused on the fact that you don't remember. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if I keep saying, I never remember my dreams, the body goes, okay, where's granted, you don't remember your dreams. Okay. So that's step one. Step one, it doesn't matter. Step two, let's start pulling at strings. So I wake up and I keep a dream journal right next to the bed. When I wake up, I write down anything I remember. If I don't remember anything, I write down how I feel. You just write down the very first impressions you have upon waking up, and that's like pulling a thread. And you're already focused on that vibration, so the vibration will get bigger. Pretty soon you remember more and more details. Pretty soon your dreams become more linear. Pretty soon you can put them together and interpret them.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just that, see, that's the thing with the law of attraction and everything. Like, you know it in theory, but then, like, you forget about applying it in so many areas of your life because it just, you forget, basically.
That was the design of this dimension. So this is going to sound vulgar, but we call it going balls deep in the program. And you know, when a guy gets in the water and he like hits his testicles, he's like, woo! Balls deep in the program for us humans means in the physical dimension, I'm going to get so lost in the separateness that look at what kind of expansion that's going to give me, right? You can't truly know oneness until you know separateness to its furthest extreme degree. Talk about the life we're living, right? I'm going to go in there, even for me. This is why we've got the dichotomy. I'm like, I'm this person that knows all these answers, came in with these answers, sees the united connective nature of this universe, and yet, I'm dealing with washing dishes and, feeling frustrated because my mother said something crappy to me today, And so, even me, coming into the physical dimension means that you're going to disconnect yourself from that united reality to such a degree that, of course, you feel that way. But the whole goal here is that now that we've done that game, okay? If you're watching this program, you've done that game. You're ready to come back into alignment with who you really are. So it's all about just the day-by-day practice. And it's not like super hard. It's all about in this moment. What one thing could I think or one thing could I do that would make me come back into alignment with who I really am? It's that simple. We make it complicated.
Yeah. I think it's also because many of us, we don't actually know who the real me is because you have never experienced it, It's just something like that people tell you, right? Like, yay, like you're amazing and you were born like this miracle baby and you can do everything and you're full of potential. But many people don't feel like that because they've never experienced it. So it might be harder for them to reconnect to that because they feel like it's not there in the first place. Yeah, but I guess that's the ultimate.
I'm not worried about it. You want to know why?
Yeah, tell me.
Because, yet again, nobody has to believe that they have a real self. It is the basis of who you are. So it's not like we have to go looking for something that's lost. All we got to do is decide, do I feel really good in this moment? No. Okay, what can I do that would make me feel a little bit better in this moment? What feels more in alignment? And then what you start noticing is it doesn't take any effort. It just starts shining through. I don't have to go looking for who I really am. It just sort of pops up. Because I cleaned all this crap out of the way. So it's like nobody has to believe that they have a true self. And nobody has to know who that real self is. We just got to start caring how we feel.
Yeah.
Notice that's coming up a lot?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because of where, the collective vibration in the Czech Republic is very much, I'm not allowed to care how I feel. Because things just have to be done.
Yeah.
I don't care how I feel. My kid has to be driven to, whatever thing they're doing today. I don't care how I feel. The house has to be clean. It's like we've made other things a priority over how we feel. And of course you're not going to feel like you're on the right path if that's the way you're thinking about life.
Yeah, and I also think we have a lot of that mentality that, you gotta work hard for everything. That nothing comes easy and that, basically without effort you don't get anything. So like if it's easy, like you're saying, like, it's already there. You don't have to do anything. Everyone will be like, yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I would say in response is quite easy. Keep trying it that way and see whether you can even enjoy what happens in the end.
One last thing I would like to ask you is, this goes back to the interview you had last week with Juraj when you were describing your vision of the Teal company and all the changes you would like to do in the world, which I think is amazing because I actually resonate with a lot of them, especially the medical one, the food one, everything. But I wanted to ask you about the education one because what you said was that you think that it's important that we focus on sort of cultivating like specific skills that everyone has. If you have a talent for whatever, working with computers or making music, you should focus on that because like the general knowledge that's taught in schools right now in terms of where different countries are and what type of religion they have or don't have and whatever we have in chemistry and physics and things like this, these are sort of just lots of information that clogs your brain and you don't really need it in many cases. But I actually wanted to argue with that a little bit.
Okay, come on.
Because I think that when you don't have general knowledge of these things, at least a little bit, in terms of like, people in different countries live in a different way and things like this creates ignorance for me, which is very dangerous from how I perceive it, because I feel like this is what creates hatred and xenophobia between people, because they don't know each other. And to justify myself, okay, I'm an anthropologist, therefore I have studied like how different cultures and societies live and that we should respect each other for who we are without wanting to change other people. But what I have faced many times is that the ignorance, the fact that people don't have enough information about something because they have never heard about it or never cared about it, creates fear in them because they feel threatened by it, and then it causes some kind of violence, or not even violence, but some kind of resistance and xenophobia and things like this. So what do you think about that? Maybe it's just completely two separate things, but I just feel personally that having some kind of general knowledge about the world and how things work is actually very important. Not just cultivating specific individual skills, which I think is also very crucial, but not eliminating this at all.
Oh, I believe in eliminating it. I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
All right, so can you know that humans will always be afraid of what they don't understand?
Good question. No, I guess that's...
I think this is one of the lies that we tell as a human race.
Okay.
If that was the case, then what you would watch is a small baby would not walk right up to anything. But it's actually quite the opposite. What humans don't know is directly where they race. That's why you are such an expansive species. When the human doesn't know about something, it goes the exact opposite of this. So we've been telling the lie for many years that it's not knowing about things that makes us fearful, and so we got to know about things. That's just those of us who really have a strong belief that without knowledge we're unsafe.
Yeah, that's totally me. That attachment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
So we've been telling the lie for many years that it's not knowing about things that makes us fearful, and so we got to know about things. That's just those of us who really have a strong belief that without knowledge we're unsafe.
Yeah, that's totally me.
Where we start getting into really fearing things that we quote-unquote don't understand, it has nothing to do with that. It's that we're projecting something that we think is there that isn't necessarily there. So it's not that we're looking at something that we don't understand. It's that we think we understand what we're looking at, and we really don't. So, like the reason that we would fear like another culture is because we already are projecting our own beliefs about that culture there. It's not that we're saying, I don't know, and therefore I'm scared.
Yeah, so it's basically like a control issue in the end of the day, that it just makes me feel less safe when I don't understand something, and therefore I feel like I gotta understand everything in order to know what to expect, sort of?
Yes, it's a major safety issue for you. But it's also that you're misinterpreting what's happening when we're ending up in other, countries with guns. So you think that if people in let's say that our country's the bully of the universe, let's just be frank. So let's pretend that we're watching America, and America is parachuted into the Middle East yet again, right? And so you're watching us thinking, wow, if we could just let people over in that country understand, try to teach them what it took to understand this culture, then there would be safety because they wouldn't have this war.
Are you reading my mind right now, or how are you? Okay.
The issue with that is that isn't the case. What it is that our people in this country have an idea about that country that it is primitive, that it is not okay the way that it is, that they should not be fighting each other in this holy war that existed before we were even a country. So we've got these ideas about how they should or shouldn't be already. And no amount of explaining to us in school what that is like for them over there is going to allow us to come into some kind of alignment with that. The only way to experience what it is like for a culture is to literally put all those kids on a plane, fly them over there, and have them first-person experience the culture. And that being feasible, maybe it's possible one day. I'm going to be the first person to say, maybe anything is possible. But right now, in terms of at least in this country, the feasibility of that is very, very low. And so you could never bring an experience into the classroom which helped them come into alignment to such a degree that they fully understood the way that these people's lives are. And so, but with self-initiated learning, this is where it gets super fantastic. The person who's self-initiating their kind of learning is going to be the kind of person who puts that kind of attention into a subject. Because it's not even about a skill. This goes past skills. Maybe somebody like you has a passion for anthropology, and so their major focus is learning about all these different cultures. And so that's what they should be focusing on. Does that make sense? So if we're really trying to impose, you should know this, you should know this, you should know this on all of the children, then you are doing the same thing where you're saying, I know what's best for you to be learning. And the reason that I think that is because I would like to be safe from you when you grow up and somebody puts an Uzi in your hand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And it's our lack of freedom. This is another thing. So let's step even further back. It's our lack of freedom, our feeling of powerlessness that makes us even want to go do negative things to other cultures. If you meet somebody who's totally in their aspect of power, I've had all the control in my life. I've got to learn whatever I want to learn. In fact, I realize that I can understand anything I want to understand because now I know how to initiate that learning. What you watch is that there's this empowerment that happens, and so I don't feel powerless to new things at all. In fact, when somebody steps in the room, I'm not going to have a resistance to it. I'm going to go right for it. So the people, if we created this kind of a school system, regardless of what we did or didn't teach them about the rest of the world, they wouldn't have that powerless attitude that actually causes us to go over there with guns. So it is the very education that we're being given that causes us to do that.
Okay. Yeah.
If you were to step into a school system or to the culture and places, it's like, that country's bad, let's teach you all the ways that they're bad, and now it's like, that's the real reason that we have already got these projections towards other things. That's not natural human behavior at all. The natural human, if you were to leave a baby alone, is the exact opposite of that.
Okay, so basically, what it should look like is that we should let everyone to take the path they want from the beginning. Just let them do whatever they feel like doing, what fills them with joy, and not really teach them maybe principles.
I gotta go already. It would really make me feel better if you learned about conspiracy theories.
Okay, why?
I don't have a good reason. I'm just saying this is the same sort of stance that you've been taking relative to schools.
Okay.
It would make, because of the way that I think that this is going to go, if we teach everybody everything about the rest of the culture in the world, now I think it's appropriate for them to learn these things. I could play the same game. I could say, well, she's going to buy into the system. I can't trust her in and of herself to be a good person, see? And so she's going to buy into a system and fall right into the trap of these people. And so for me, it's important that you learn about conspiracy theories. Do I have a leg to stand on?
Okay.
Do you think you're this horrible person that's going to be ignorant and do all kinds of negative things because you don't know about the conspiracy theories?
Yeah, true.
We got this attitude which we got to drop, which is that people are innately negative and that they're innately out of the womb going to resist anything they don't know about, and so we got to kind of curb them somehow. And that's one of the major things that I don't want people to continue thinking. You were perfect coming out of the womb.
Yeah.
You are perfect now. You're not. We don't need to distrust you to go into the world and create havoc. That's actually not natural to the human race. That is the byproduct of what you have been watching here, where we take this perfect being who's ready to create, who's ready to learn, and we say, you don't get to learn that, you don't get this kind of freedom, this is what I'm going to cram down your mouth. And now you see this person that is an aspect of resistance. Now you see, I'm going to take a gun into this other country because I absolutely hate them already. It's not that I don't get them. It's that I literally hate them. Because what I think about them is this thing I've already predetermined. Not a natural state of the human mind.
But so how do you do it in practice? For example, I hope you don't mind asking, but are you going to homeschool your son, or how is it going to work? Because, you are right, listening to this, it makes absolute sense. But how do you put it in practice in the real world, when there is all the kids go to school and they are taught certain things, and then if you raise your child differently, it sort of automatically becomes an outsider, and therefore another type of resistance is, and sort of trauma is created, right? So how do you avoid this?
I don't want to avoid it. I think that's part of what he came into experience.
Okay.
And so for me, what it's going to be about is doing whatever feels in alignment for him in the get-go. He's going to get to initiate what he wants to do. If he really wants to go to school, I'm sending him to school. But it's going to be his initiation, all of it. If he wants to learn from home, then he wants to learn from home. I'm going to get him tutors that can teach him the stuff that he really wants to learn. I'm just going to let him lead his life, which is the difference. And so he knew coming into this life what he had to work with. That means he knows his raw materials already. All my job is to, as a loving mother, it's not even my job, it's just because it feels good to me to do, is to enable him in the direction of his own freedom. So today it might look like getting him guitar lessons. Tomorrow it might look like him going to public school. Why? Because he wants to hang out with his friends. Who the hell cares? Fine, go for the social interaction. But you better believe the whole time I'll be talking to him about my attitude relative to the school. I'll be talking to him about how I think that it's incredibly important that he learns to initiate what he wants to learn. And if this child says, I don't want to go to school anymore, I'd rather do this, you better believe he will be pulled out of school so fast that his head will spin. What I'm looking to do here with my son, relative to education, is to let him lead, because I understand that the most important, let's just take all the curriculum out of it. I'm not here to judge what he needs to learn and not learn. What I'm here to do is to honor his process of learning. So the best thing we could do for anybody is to teach them how to initiate their own learning. Think about your most intelligent people on earth, the people who do the most here for the human race. What does that look like? It looks like this. They're the kind of people who are so interested in something and let themselves go in the direction of that interest that they're tinkering around with things for hours at a time. That is self-initiated learning. And we are teaching children how not to do that. That's an issue because, being able to, the quest for knowledge is a serious part of freedom. The quest for knowledge is a serious empowerment state. So if I would like to empower my child, that's what I'm going to empower. I'm going to empower him to find his own answers. I'm going to empower him to initiate his own learning process. It's that simple. So that'll look different today versus tomorrow. And in the future, there will be enough parents that are sick of cramming them into a box, teaching them how to not think for themselves, that our school system is going to start to reflect this new idea. Then there'll be more opportunities, and then it just gets better and better. Because now it's like, I have a definitive program I want to put him in. Right now I don't. So I'm going to be piecing things together, hodgepodge. But it's not like I feel like a failure or like the human race has failed him, because guess what? He knew he was dealing with that before he came in. The same way I knew I was going to get crammed in the classroom.
Okay, so maybe the last question that we will finish off with, because we are already done with the time. I don't want to hold you for too long. I forgot the question. I keep forgetting everything. Oh yeah, I know. When are you coming to Czech Republic? That's what I wanted to ask you. Or are you planning?
But I'm sure as hell going to be there.
Yeah, well, you should come, at least to Europe. Are you planning any trip to Europe, like to do any sort of workshop or?
Yes, in November I'll be in London.
Okay, great. So we should organize something with Yura, so you can come here as well.
Completely love that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, that's
like I said, I'm insatiably curious. So you better believe it's like hard to talk to me when I'm in new locations. Sometimes I'm good when I'm like stuck in a room, but when you bring me to other countries, you should see me. I'm like a 3-year-old kid. They joke that it's like herding a cat because I'm over introducing myself to this person and like staring at the ceiling and like, so.
I'm actually a tour guide in Prague. I can give you a tour around Prague.
And we have a babovka here.
yeah. The sponge cake, yeah. Okay. So, thank you so much, Teal, for having the interview with us. It was amazing, and you are just great, and I really admire you. I hope that one day I could have all the answers as well, and not struggle with myself anymore. But
well, good. I'm going to tell you something interesting. Then, ready?
Okay.
You already do have all the answers. It's the only reason this resonates with you is because nothing I'm telling you is actually new. It's just you remembering the truth of who you really are. The rest of us have more faith in you than you do.
Okay, that's good to know. That's probably true, yeah. But see, that's another thing. That's the thing is that it's always so much easier to see things on other people rather than on yourself, right?
Yes, and then we would say, guess what? You came down to the physical dimension with all kinds of projections of yourself so that we could tell you about you.
Yeah.
So when I'm telling you about you, it's actually you telling you about you, so you do know everything about yourself.
Yeah, true. That's also another.
So you're holding yourself accountable for something which is pretty unloving to do. So a lot of us in the spiritual demographic like to say things like that. Well, it's always easier to see that in other people, and it's not as easy to see it myself. And I'm going to use that as an excuse to feel bad about my level of ignorance relative to myself. But it's totally fine. The reason, so we're all here, so we understand we're all oneness, right? But you're in this perspective, I'm in this perspective. We call these perspectives by a different name. But all this is you looking at you from multiple perspectives. So rather than tell the story of, I can't know about me and only other people can know about me because it's hardest to see yourself, let's just tell the true story, which is, it's super beneficial to understand this perspective of that perspective. Makes sense?
To sort of understand the perspective of me looking at the perspective that I think that I cannot understand myself, but I can understand others?
No, like what's the reason that exists is because it's super beneficial in this universe. I'm looking at you from a different angle than you're looking at yourself from. So of course I'm going to see different things.
Yeah, true.
So instead of sort of beating yourself up with that, which by the way you do, when you say that I'm watching your frequency move that way, instead of beating yourself up with that, let's just realize that was actually the way it was meant to be. That others would see things about us that we don't see from this perspective. Because it's a different perspective. Okay,
I'll no longer do that then.
Well, this is if your friend gets to call you on it every time.
Okay, well, I don't know what happened here. It got stuck, like we cannot see your image anymore. I can just hear the audio, but yeah.
Really, it's the same over here, but we're in reverse.
Is it? Am I stuck on your picture as well? Well then, once again, thank you so much, Teal.
Thank you, I love you.
We love you too.
Thank you very much.
And enjoy the solstice today, okay?
Oh, I will.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll see you later.
See you, bye, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
tam budou jak mastný knedlík v té lampičce.